Uh, well, we're going to have hijacking patriarchy. In opposition, we're going to have triple raccoon. I'm going to let the fellow adjudicators to introduce themselves. I think starting from Adelia in alphabetical order to Yvonne. So Adelia, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, I'll be the panelist in this round. I'm from Usul and good luck everyone. Thank you.
Shafal.
Hello everyone, I'm Chavalet. I'll be the panelist in this round. Nice to meet you guys.
Next, Steffi.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie from UKP. Good luck everyone.
Last but not least, Yvonne.
Hey everyone, I'm Yvonne. Will be the panel for this round. Best of luck.
All right, that's all. Of course, reminders, don't forget to state your preferred POI methods before you start your speech. I truly encourage you to do POI and to receive one, of course. And if you have any preferred gender pronouns, feel safe to state so. And it will be very helpful if everyone can do their own timer too. I'm going to do my own timer, but there might be some times that I forgot to put it in the chat box. So just gonna be helpful if everyone also have their own timer. So yeah, without further ado, I'm calling upon Prime Minister to open the debate here.
Hi, am I audible?
Audible.
Thank you. Sorry. By the way, POI preference, just unmute yourself. I don't have any I probably won't be able to look at the chat. I don't have any specific preferred pronoun. Just refer to me by anything on my speaker position. Thank you. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in. I'll be starting. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think it's very objective goal for our children when there are like probably two choices that makes up the dilemma is to obviously choose a choices that is like a less harmful choice for your kid. And that is why I think our proposition is that we want as parents, we think that it's objectively justifiable for parents to want to send their kids and obviously preferable for those parents to send their low support autistic kids to a regular school and stuff, special needs school. I think few pieces of setup just to crystallize this debate, right? I think first of all, in terms of burden, I just want to make it extremely clear. I think an important metric that has to be pushed is then first of all is that you have to consider, right? I think that as parents, which one is like the most likely choice, and therefore the likely choice then becomes like the choices that makes up the greatest good that can ultimately support their parents. Because I think that the world that probably we are in right now is probably the parents who are like the rational parents that want to support their kids and therefore be there for their kids, especially supporting their their autistic kids through their journey and just being supportive overall. Like, so second of all, let's talk about I think the debate let's just frame this debate. We're talking about like this debate in like conservative areas, which means that the special needs school that exists in this conservative area probably is just not as sufficient as like probably areas that are really well developed and then probably areas that are like less conservative. Because what you mean by conservative is that people probably are less accepting of these ideas of this like autism and stuff like that. Right? It means that they will like to be like less facilities built to cater towards autism and stuff like that. Why? It's because that people, like normal parents, for example, parents who are less accepting of autism also, who thinks that autism is like such a bad thing and they want to hide it, they probably most likely like want to choose to send their kids to probably like the regular schools. So what you have in like schools of conservative areas is that the special needs school are most likely going to be like it's less ideal for just their kids to be in those kind of school where like the facilities probably won't be as sufficient, the education probably won't be that good. So we think that this is like kind of a justified characterization of like this special needs school in the conservative areas, right? So what we think that the parents here should be like. So we think that most of most likely is it that they want their kids to be able to grow up like as a especially in this kind of conservative kind of society where they have to probably opt in into the values of the social of these the society, and they want their kids to be able to function, especially as an adult where there's so many dynamic social dynamics, there's so many other responsibilities that their kids will probably have to navigate. So what this means that the parents want their kid to probably learn how to be self-sufficient, and they probably put their children in a condition, their kids in a way that they are able to learn that. So notice when I say that I want the kids, the parents most likely want the kids to be able to learn such skills, it's because these parents are probably not like opposition is trying to claim is that they're toxic with their I think it's just that they want their best for their kids, and therefore they want their kids to be able to just survive in the future, learn all those values that cannot be found in like those special needs school. Because one thing that these kids will probably still have under our sub house, we think that even if they don't go to these special needs school, we think that like will still get like the support that the kids did. For example, you have things like therapy and stuff like that, because these parents already know that their children have like autism and stuff like that. We think that most likely the parents will probably also send their kids to like therapy and stuff like that. But support also exists more than that. We think that it also exists when those kids find like genuine friends from like those regular schools, because we don't think that it's very like very charitable for opposition to just characterize as all people there to be like mean, because no, people can be understanding. And especially I think that I want to stress is that these are low support needs autistic children, which means that they can still highly function like daily, like they just have like special things that kind of like really bug them, or like they need like support for like certain things. But then moving on then, so let's say if like opposition wants to talk to you, oh, so why regular school over special needs school, when in special needs school they can be supported and they can be understood? So let's be real, I think response to this, right? I think first of all is that those children are probably never really going to fit in, whether in society or whether in these those kind of special needs school. Why is this true? It's because in those special needs schools, most likely what's going to happen is that the kids that are probably sent there are all like high functioning autistic kids. I think that most likely when you send your low support needs autistic children there, they will also feel different because they are like so hyperactive or so high functioning and stuff like that. Those probably kids will also feel different. But then second of all, the real delta here is that when the children can never really fit in any way in society and everything, the delta is the exclusive thing under our side of the house is at least the children will be able to learn the values, like for example, that can help them integrate in society later on when they learn those things at regular school. So this brings on to my case then of the principle of integration. So we bring it two problems that we think is very, very important in terms of these kids' survivability. The first one is that we think that it's very likely that these children will have to grow up into opting into conservative values. And the problem here is that autistic kids, I think that even if you're low support, you have a hard time learning social cues. You have a hard time understanding certain things, and that's because their brains are kind of like wired differently, and that's normal. So it is extremely important that these parents consider the struggle that their children will face in the future. So with the comparative here is that if the idea of like conditioning your kids into those challenges probably might not seem very ideal, but if you consider like what these parents might think like for in the future, and they want their kids to be more self-sufficient and to be able to be properly functioning adults, you have to condition your children into learning like all these values that they can only get at the regular school, that we don't think that they can get any of it in special needs school. Then moving on to the second problem. So even if people surrounding you are willing to empathize you on certain like levels, it will still be very hard for normal people to understand like what these kids actually feel, what these autistic people actually feel. And then it makes sense because like they will never really be able to understand just how hard is it to function as autistic kids, or like for example they don't really understand how like the differences in the way they think. And this is where we think that sending your kids to regular school will really help these kids to like learn like important skills, like for example things like masking. I think that lots of like low support needs autistic children are able to like learn masking when like they're actually able to be integrated to like these like regular needs school, because they just learn so many different social dynamics, like they learn to interact and then just socialize and just get a taste before they actually move on to the society, where they probably will be just like will be so many other social dynamics that they have to understand. And we think that it's kind of evil for these parents to actually put this special needs school and to just like let the children be able to kind of like really hard time to integrate back to society. But then second of all, I think another secondary consideration for the parents is also in terms of like the socialization, a chance for meaningful socialization, especially with like those like kids in regular school. I think like the really important is that like even if like when you put your children in those like regular schools, you get to your children get to be able to kind of like really get the normal socialization, but then they're also able to get like education who are actually like to standard, because especially we've already told you that this happens in conservative areas. I think that for all those reasons, I think that as a reasonable parents, that it would make sense and it would be very justifiable to send your low support needs autistic kids to regular schools instead. So I'm proud to propose.
All right, thank you for the fine speech. Now opening the case of op, I'm calling upon Leader of Opposition. Here.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna. My pronouns are she, her. My POI preference is just unmute because I will not be checking the Zoom chat. Just a trigger warning before I start my speech that the following statements of these speeches are for the purpose of the debate, and we apologize if we directly offend anyone through it, as such is not our intention. So then, I would like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. As a parent, would you really send your child into a regular school knowing that they will face bullying, criticism, and be discriminated? What do we want? We want our children to be protected and grow up in an environment where differences are accepted as a normal thing, one in which they're able to grow up still with the differences they have and still have the support they need, even if it's only little. The motion states that while the child may need less support than other forms of autistic children, they're still different and have different thinking patterns and different learning curves than other children. We believe that this problem, as a parent, is that we risk ruining the mental well-being of the child through being in school unfamiliar with their differences in an idealistic world where we understand that maybe it would work so they are more well-adjusted to society to function, or creates a stigma to the family for putting them into a special needs school. But that's not how it works in real life, especially in traditional and conservative areas. While the differences and ability to act quote unquote normal would be better than other autistic kids who need more support, they still act differently than other kids. They're not still fully alike other kids. What do other kids do when they find someone different than them? Either they try to distance themselves or they act mean to them. From real life experience in our conservative country, literally just go to any regular school and you will see multitudes of groups of kids being severely bullied or their existence being ignored by their classmates. This is not what becomes a well-adjusted kid. Basically, almost all kids considered different go through this. I'm sure many of you listening have also already know it too. Never mind, sorry, kids with autism with apparent differences they don't act mainstream in school. It's visible even if it's a low support autism. It becomes apparent here that the only possible solution towards this is by putting our kid into a special needs school where they can get proper socialization they need with other kids similar to them and are able to get more support from an experienced teacher so that they might have a chance of getting real world socialization. We can consult the teachers first as a parent, then we can put them into regular activities with shorter time spans that are able to be cancelled if it doesn't work out. For example, scouts, dance lessons, etc. They hold the benefits of the government might hold, but give them a lower stress environment that can be changed if things don't work out. So again, there's always an alternative. As a parent, we of course want the best for our low support needs autistic child. Special needs school can cater to that. It has more slow-paced learning or more adjustable learning, and has more facilities like the quiet room, while regular school has more fast-paced learning, more exposure to children without neurodivergent needs, and not guaranteed to cater to low support autism. Especially in conservative areas that are not accustomed to the existence of special needs, some are not fully educated on special needs and low support autistic children, making them more prone to face discrimination that they do not seem physically or psychologically different at first glance. And kids are easily molded by their environment, and their moral sense is not fully developed yet, thus relying on going with the flow and what their parents in a conservative area want. So of course, children are the most vulnerable actor here. Then a few rebuttals then. What if they want to hide their low needs autism? As a parent, it is morally unjust for us to cover up a child's identity and choosing personal reputation over the child's well-being. No exclusivity on the government side, because it can also happen with other organizations or other activities such as organization work. Conservative areas will probably not have special needs school, or at least a good one. However, we don't know enough about the areas and the parents the kids live in. Even if it's hard to find or a bit far away, surely the parents would do anything for the children's well-being. From the motion and in the scenario, there's obviously one, as the motion states. What if they feel different from other autistic children in a special needs school? We would like to bring out the likelihood on why this kid would feel different in a special needs school, and sending them to a normal school, this could help social skills and other skills like integrity. But we totally disagree with this, because even if they are placed into a normal school, they won't have much of a high social skill, because oftentimes they cannot pick up on social cues, because he or she or they will get bullied for his or her or their autism. And from our side, they can still get social skills from a special needs school by communicating with other low support autism kid or by communicating with teachers and parents and other environments, right? Moving on to my arguments then. First, bullying. Why it's principally incorrect to place children with special needs children with conservative children who do not know the existence on how to cater to children with special needs. They might not even know the differences between special needs children versus them. For children who are not accustomed to the sight of how to handle physical needs children, they are more prone to go against special needs child. They might also bully the special needs child to harm them. Pressure and discrimination from their peers. These special needs children may face pressure and discrimination from their peers, i.e. not being able to hear loud sounds, fidgeting, specific material, etc. In this case, they might miss out on a lot of social events like band, music, etc. This might also take into account that it may also make them feel like they are left behind as a parent. How could I want that for my children? Of course, we would like to sponsor a safe space and environment for my child to be able to make friends. Moving on then. Representation. Why? Because everyone has the right to feel represented and a sense of belonging to their own identity, whether it's minority or a law needs autism case. Why is it important then? As a parent, we would want our children to grow up in a safe space and be proud of their identity and their background, even if it's not part of the norm. We would want to be comfortable with their friends, and we want to show them that there are people like that, and no, to be neurodivergent is not a crime. Why is it exclusive then? In a non-special needs school, there will be little to no needs autism children compared to the likelihood of a special needs school, right? Okay. Pressure and discrimination from teachers. Teachers in conservative areas may not necessarily be accustomed on these special needs children or how to handle these special needs children. Teachers who teach in regular schools instead of special needs autism schools may have less experience or no experience dealing with people with low support needs autism. Two scenarios then. One, they might pay a lot of extra attention to the children because they know that they have low needs autism, making them possibly uncomfortable, pressurized, or because of the extra attention. Second is overgeneralization or generalization, or people who do not care at all. They won't keep track of the development of these children. If they need a quiet room, special fabric, etc. These teachers could also blame them if their learning progress is too slow or too fast because they don't recognize what they actually are, right? Neurodivergent, because they don't exactly look like it at first glance, or show obvious signs of it that are more like publicly accepted. Why is it better on our side then? Because it's well adjusted and more proud of their identity. Why? Because they're more surrounded by people more like them, people who are similar to them, who are also proud of their identities. Of course, special needs school would of course validate these students, concerns, needs, etc., and make sure that they're comfortable, because that's the standard of education that all special needs school have, right? Why is this good then? Now, because they now understand that what they have is not their fault. It's not something that makes them a worse person. They learn not to accept the fact that it's a unique part of their identities. This would not happen in regular schools. Instead, they would be taught that this part of them should be concealed because it's a conservative country then. Second is practical argument. It deters both their learning and others. Teachers need to be extra observant. Then teachers will need to recheck the children to see if they are able to catch up or able to be fully integrate into the class and sessions, potentially slowing down lessons or speeding up lessons in a manner where they are not comfortable. That could also possibly face opposition from other children. It could also give them extra mental strain or pressure to perform better, even if there is no bullying case. Okay, that is all from my speech. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. Now, continuing the case of Golf, I'm calling upon DPM here.
Hello, not audible.
Audible.
Hello.
Audible.
My pronouns. Huh?
Audible.
Okay. My
Audible.
pronouns are she, her. My PR preferences are just open your mic because I won't be checking the Zoom chat nor the emoticons. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. I feel like something opposition side has failed to understand is the fact that when you as parents are willing to send kids to your kids who have this certain low support needs autism to a regular school in the conservative area, is the fact that they understand that their kids have this certain issue with themselves, right? Which is exactly why it's more likely that these parents would like they would pity their kids, right? They would still send them to, again, therapy. They would still give them advice on how to socialize in the in the society of this regular school, right? And then another thing is that at some certain extent, at the very least, in these regular schools, whether or not they are in conservative area, what teachers will not problematize whether or not these kids are going to catch up faster or not, is the fact that they understand that these certain kids have this certain problem in between them, in within themselves, right? They have this certain autism, right? Even if it's a low support need, they would still have at some certain extent understand why these kids wouldn't be able to catch up, right? Now then, moving on. Rebuttals to what opposition has said. Opposition tries to tell to you that these kids will be bullied, but we already told to you that at the very least, when parents understand that they're going to send their kids to this certain regular school, they understand that they still need to adapt. They have to socialize in the certain school, so they are able to make friends, socialize with others. They have to be able to catch up the lessons, right? Therefore, which is exactly then why these kids will still accept therapy or even therapy, which is exactly then why this certain therapy will not just be obtained in this special needs school, right? Because what opposition trying to say to you is that you can only be accepted in a society when you study in this certain special needs school, right? Which is exactly then why kids will then eventually still have the chance to make friends, will still have the chance to socialize, will still have the chance to study the proper curriculum that will eventually help them in the future. Because exactly that, when you receive this proper education, you are able to in the future obtain a job. You are able to adapt with the society itself, right? Now then, allow me to explain the differences between a regular school and special needs schools. One difference between the curriculum between the regular schools and also the special needs school is that the fact that these special needs schools are specifically designed for people who are who have this certain disability. Not to mention that my first speaker has already mentioned that this school in the conservative area is located in the conservative area, meaning that these schools would most definitely again, conservative means that they are very I mean, not really reluctant, but they are really less prone to change, right? Which is exactly then why the facility, the curriculum of these certain schools will not be perfected like others, like other developing countries. Which is exactly then why these schools will not be when you put your kids to this certain school, it's very clear that you will not be able to offer the certain standard curriculum which will help you in the future, right? The only thing you are going to be able to obtain here is to able to help your child. But then the problem is, my first speaker has already said, at the very least, people who are in these special needs schools, especially in conservative areas, are those who have actually very bad sorry to say this, autism disorder, right? Which is exactly then why their parents want to send their kids to this special needs school, right? That's the difference. And then another thing is that a difference between regular school and special needs school is that, one, they hire very regular teachers while special needs schools hire professionals who are going to teach these kids, who are going to help them, for example, like these speech therapy or anything, like speech therapists or anything. But to you this, even if opposition side try to preempt to you that they will not be able to they will not have the certain facility to help them with the certain these special needs. But the problem is, outside of regular schools, and parents still understand that their kids they still have the certain things, right? Which is therefore then why these kids will still receive treatment, right? They will still receive therapy. They will still receive advice from their parents, right? And then moving on, I mentioned special needs schools, especially in conservative area, are very rare, right? They would of course be very expensive, because again, these kids are not easy to are not easy to be handled, right? Because again, people who are in special needs school, again, I have to say this because that these kids are really they have a certain very bad symptom, right? Which is exactly then why they are sent to special needs school, which is exactly then why it's more expensive comparatively to regular schools. We can't then. It's all clear that moving on, opposition side tries to tell to you that these kids will not get representation. But at the very least, what you can actually obtain from our side of the house is that, first, when you are able to adapt, when you understand that, because regular schools are of course set to be like exactly what the society needs. Your parents are not people who are going to be protecting you until you grow up, right? Which is exactly then why you as parents would want to send your kids to these regular schools, right? Because you want them to have a chance to adapt to the society, to be able to understand that, oh, the world isn't so easy. The world has so many things that you have to understand, which is exactly then why parents cannot shield their kids forever. They have to be able to show them the real world, which is then why these parents would want to send their kids to these, even if they are low support need autistic, they would send their kids to these regular schools, right? Because in the end of the day, what you will be able to obtain is the fact that you are going to adapt to the society, and eventually you will be accepted to the society, because you understand how the society works, and eventually whether or not you are whether or not you're autistic, you are going to be able to integrate to the society, because that's what your parents want in the first place. Because your parents cannot shield you eventually when you are going to move on to the society, and not to mention, you are also, in the end of the day, you are going to you are also going to receive proper like this standard curriculum that's going to help you eventually, because this is very important to help you proceed eventually in your work life, and help you understand the society better. Moving on then, I feel like another thing is that especially because these special needs schools are very very conservative in this conservative area, the people who are in this who are in this special needs school, like what I've said before, are not going to be able to socialize better with these kids, right? Those who are in those support needs. But the thing is, they will not even if they have like certain autism, at the very least, when they are put in regular school, they are still able to socialize better. They still have friends that made to understand them, and help them integrate better to society, which is then why I'm very proud to propose.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. Continuing the case of Op, I'm calling upon DL. Here.
Okay, I'll be the second speaker for opposition team, and my POI reference is just to unmute because I won't be seeing the Zoom call. And my speech, and I would like to give out a trigger warning first in case if any of you find it offensive towards my speech, and we do not mean any of those. And I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now I'd like to start off with some rebuttals first. Now, the opposition team said that we can just send them to therapy and we can just send them to a normal school. The government contradicts themselves. All the stigmas they propose for a special needs school have similar stigma to therapy. Therapy also cannot suddenly magically solve your social skill issues and well adjustment. That's why this motion and debate exist in the first place. They help you go through your problems, yes, but you can't fully gain social skills by just talking to with one therapist or just go to one therapist. Now, we would like to say that we don't oppose therapy, but therapy doesn't get rid of the emotional scar of bullying and etc. If it comes from regular school where you have to go there every day, you have to face the people every day and have to face, like, most likely face a bully every day. What is the likelihood that they will attend therapy in the same amount? Essentially, therapy is like a solution to mitigate the scars. However, if the wound is still bleeding, if they constantly get exposed to the toxic environment, therapy is just not enough. You can't push a child in water and expect them to swim. They will never learn how to swim because that's not how life works, and that's not the case. They'll drown. Instead, you need to let them adapt to the water. Make it so that they are comfortable first and teach them the basics before pushing them in the water again so they can swim. So basically, the kid has to be adapted slowly before it gets pushed into the real world, and the special needs school can do this. We would like to say that even if we send it to therapy, it's such a waste of money. Like, it's such a waste of money when you can just send them to a special needs school where the school can make the same impact from going to a normal school and a therapy itself, or make a more benefit. In fact, I will explain that furthermore in my arguments. Now, opposition team also said that send it to a normal school. This would help them learn social skills and other skills like the integrity. We totally disagree with this because even if they are placed to a normal school, they won't have that much of a high social skill because she or he will get bullied for his or her autism. And even from our side, they can still get social skills from a special needs school. How? By communicating with another low support needs autism kid, or by communicating to teachers, and they have to go and they have to go out into the world at some point, right? So they will definitely get social skills. A special needs school will definitely teach them skills like integrity and etc. Now I would like to move on to my arguments. My first argument is it is an urgent action and it needs to be taken by the parents. To recall the characterization for a low support needs autism kid. Low support needs autism kid is a kid that has a case of autism that can still think on his own and do specific things on his own, except for in some cases like and disabilities like they can't stand loud places or they can't pick up with social skills and etc. Even the small things is a necessary need for the kid to be helped with, for the kid to be supported with. You might be asking why would the kid even need special needs if he or she can stand on him or her alone. Well, even if she or he can survive these conditions, she or he won't be treated as a normal kid, just like what my first speaker has said in her first argument about bullying. Not only that, but he won't be able to do things as well as other people because of his or her disability. No offense. Therefore, the kid itself needs to have that support so he or she can do things as good as a normal person with the support that is given in a special needs school. And as you can see in the real world right now, with the regular schools, we can see that in our day-to-day life, they cannot afford the time or the money to just support one kid with his or her disabilities. And not only that, but because he doesn't need as much as support, the teacher will see him as a normal student and will still see him as someone who doesn't need that much help. But no, this kind of kid actually needs support to do normal things that a normal kid can do. Therefore, a low support needs autism kid needs to be placed in a special needs school, not only because he won't get the support in a normal school, but he could get so many benefits in a special needs school rather than just going to a normal school or a regular school. If she or he is placed in a special needs school, she or he can get the support that she or he needs and can develop in a way that they can support him or her to do things that kids doesn't need help with these days. Not only that, but just like what my first speaker said in her first argument, this kid can stand out in special needs school because he or she doesn't need that much support and can still progress on his own or on her own. We would like to say that if this kid can learn things faster or things slower, they can get the proper education pace in a special needs school because the school can support and adapt to their abilities. Because they have a different learning curve and learning pace that we cannot control and we shouldn't control. But in a normal school, these kids can have to keep up with the normal education system. So even if they can learn things faster or things slower, the school itself won't adapt to his or her abilities. What we mean by this is what they can learn faster or slower, not they're dumb or smarter. There's a difference. Therefore, I would like to restate again that if they learn slower or faster, a normal school won't be able to adapt with these characteristics because of the education system in a normal school. But if they go to a special needs school, the school can adjust to their learning pace, and for those students who can learn faster, they could lead them to stand out more and than most people in the world. So I would like to restate again that the benefits are better on our side. Now, I would like to move on to my second argument. What is the impact and likelihood? The impact of putting them into these regular schools is that they're going to have a hard time to be able to adjust there. Why? Because of the school system they need to keep up with and the bullying that will happen, just like what my first speaker said. All those factors will make it hard for these kids to adjust in normal school, even if it's just in a small margin. No matter if they don't need as much support as other kids. A keyword, support because they're still autistic. The only difference is that the support they need is less extreme than the norm of what you usually think for kids with autism. They will be irrevocably damaged and traumatized by the bullying that school children tend to do, especially when they grew up to a middle and high school, that impact of bullying it will still hurt. What is the likelihood that this will happen in the conservative zone? 100%. No school is completely free from bullies. There will always be a misguided children who tend to act mean for fun of it. Sometimes not understanding the impact or the consequences that will affect the children or the autistic children itself. It will surely happen to our child in this motion, and by putting them into a special needs school, we are protecting them from here because now they are able to grow with less judgmental children who act more similar to them, with teachers who can stop any possible bullying and support them in their journey rather than bully the kids too, as we have seen plenty of times in real life. While they may not be practiced in being well adjusted to school, this heavy bullying will make them even less adjusted, whereas we have already put down an alternative where we put them in other social activities that take less time and don't need as much commitment. In the long term, these kids can be educated better and grow up to become a better person because of the special needs that are fulfilled from their childhood. Now, I would like to recall again that it is better for our child to be placed in a special needs school, and I'm proud to oppose.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. Now, closing the substantive of Gov, I'm calling upon Gov Whip here.
Hi, am I audible?
Audible.
Okay. Wait. Yeah, okay. I prefer my POI is just unmuted. My POI preference, my pronoun preferences are she, her. Yeah, I think that's it. Give me a second. Okay. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. To see my kids struggle as an adult when everyone else has been quote unquote grown, has quote unquote learned social skills, is much worse than to see them struggle as a kid where they're still able to pick up their studies, they're still able to go to you for help, they're still able to fund their therapy and whatnot. This is why in proposition, we argue that parents are more interested in seeing their child go to a regular school than going to a special needs school. That's why I've never been prouder to propose. Before moving on to any sort of my clashes, I think there's one thing I want to clarify very strongly about the framing that opposition brought, right? Because they tell you that somehow, some way, all of these children are just going to inherently get bullied all to the end of the earth, right? I think number one, they don't give you any structural analysis, right? At the very most, they tell you, oh, because they're so different. But I think to what extent are they driven that allows them to become bullied and to become isolated from society, right? I think, like, first of all, I think we want to clarify what the context slide already told you is that these people are largely act like a neurotypical person, right? But an extension towards that is what are they actually lacking, right? They lack things like being able to read social cues or having being a little bit more sensitive towards clothing and audible and other sensory items, right? I think when that's the case, the most general person would still perceive this person to be a bit to be normal. But at the extent to which you perceive this person is weird, I think the extent to the bullying that happened that is so harmful probably wouldn't even be that bad happening in on our side of the house, right? Because people generally have some sort of rationality and some sort of sense of kindness, and they like to mind their own business, therefore they won't bully. And I think that at the end of the day, the perception of these people coming from the general person is also still somewhat normal. I think the info slide is already strong enough to tell you that. I think can feel that you generally seem okay, but I think to the extent on the secondary level that okay, sure, you experience a bit of quote unquote weird behaviors, right? We think that most people aren't just going to corner you and bully you and isolate you, right? Because when you're to some extent still able to understand social cues, you're still able to make friends, you're still able to, for example, do mutual activities together, you're still, for example, to make eye contact and talk to them as per usual, right? I think when that's the case, your decisions and your behavior is able to be redeemed, even no matter how weird, because you've done something helpful towards this person as well and whatnot. So I think the claim coming from opposition really relies on the idea that they're really getting bullied and they're never ever going to be recovered. I think that framing itself already topples their case is really not that impactful, right? Two clashes in this debate. First, we're going to talk about support and group that opposition champions so much because they tell you that, oh, these people really need to go to these regulars to the special needs school to be able to get any sort of support and growth. Their case gives you no comparative. Why in proposition we're never able to get that. That's what I'm going to be highlighting right now in my speech. The first discussion is going to be talking about the expression that opposition deems so important and why expression later therefore creates these ideas of confidence and the inherentness of having to express yourself coming from opposition, right? They tell you expression is limited because, for example, you have to integrate with the people, you have forced to push yourself down and not be able to express yourself at all, right? I think the two responses to this is like, first of all, these children will still generally get to express themselves, right? You still get to complain and still get to make conversations with people. You still get to talk about your hobbies. You still get to study. You still get to go on field trips and whatnot, right? You can still complain and excuse themselves when, for example, an area gets too loud. They are allowed to, and not get a joke and whatnot, because to the regular person that still seems somewhat normal, that's somewhat still forgivable. But then second of all, assuming it's true that expression is limited by internal needs, like we think the extent to which it happens will be things like, okay, I speak less because I don't want to offend people, I'm unable to handle noise and end up having to not join certain activities, I'm unable to enjoy some sensory issues, therefore I'm not able to join these activities. I think the comparative in opposition it's still the same. You're still never ever going to be able to access these kinds of things and these kinds of quote unquote self-expression that happens in opposition side of the house, right? Because and we think that if not, it's going to get even worse, right? Because at the very least, on our side of the house, when you still get to engage in other probably more regular activities and go to a field trip with the rest of the people, or having to go to prom and whatnot, right, in your regular school, and having to have these regular facilities makes you feel somewhat more quote unquote normalized, which is oftentimes what these people really, really want, right? I think, and this is what your parents want you to feel as well, right? Because you never ever want to feel different from the regular person, right? When this is the case, it's even worse coming from an opposition, because you're forced to never ever be able to access these things for the sake of also your other autistic people or your other special needs people in your school as well, right? And when you see other people from other schools, you can see it on the internet, you can see the kids walking past your street, to go to their field trip, for example, makes you feel like you're less able to express yourself as well, because you're never to try to access these kinds of things. You're never able to do these kinds of things in the very first place. Even if opposition argues and tell you're still able to access it, you're still able to access it. The extent to which access it is on a different scale of sociability that you happen, because you're never going to be able to properly, go to these field trips with all these other kids from all these other schools that have these quote unquote behaviors that you want to also interact with and try with, right? I think expression is really limited in opposition side of the house if what they argue is never being able to do certain activities at all and whatnot. I think in terms of expression, we win, right? But second of all, talk about growth in education, right? Opposition tells you that, education is going to be easier on their side of the house, right? The prerequisite for this argument is that every single autistic person sucks at studying. This is the prerequisite for their argument, right? Because if you think about it, panels, a lot of people suck at studying. They're not autistic at all. I think the idea of being bad at studying and having different learning curves is inherent to everything, not just autism in the very first place. I think we need to highlight why it's so important for you to have these different learning curves in the first place, because autism in this context is not like high functioning autism where you don't have these same aspects of perception of the world or have different cognitive abilities or whatnot, right? So in that case, we question the idea of growth in education. But second of all, the same reason why different kids with different mental abilities are put in the same school is exactly for the reason that you want them to integrate into society, because it's still necessary for you to understand that you're not the smartest person. It's okay to be a bit different. You need to adapt with other people, because that's the idea that society brings you in the first place, right? So we talk about growth in education. I think growth itself does not only mean getting good grades, but it also means learning to understand things in different contexts and learning to want to integrate with how other people do things as well, as an inherent idea that that's what society does. So we talk about support and growth, we win in two things. One, we're able to let these people express themselves, but second, and growth to actually adapt to what society needs and not the idealistic word that opposition demands. The second thing I'm going to highlight in this debate is talking about why integration and stigmatization becomes the winning case coming from proposition, right? Thing. The idea that you have to integrate into society is only able to happen on our side of the house, because on our side of the house we make you learn from a very early age how to integrate. I think integrating that they say happens because of therapy and whatnot will not be able to happen as easily. One, because you're less likely to want to applicate these kinds of ideas in life in the very first place, because you probably only spend 2 hours in therapy and then the rest of the time you spend it with other people who are not neurotypical, and when you spend time with neurotypicals you have a hard time expressing these things in the very first place. That's what I propose.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. I think just a quick reminder for us to avoid referring to neurotypical person as a quote unquote normal. I understand how words can slip sometimes, but yeah, for future reference on another competition, I think it will be very helpful if you can just put it on your notes. Now to close the substantive part of up, I'm calling upon up Whip here.
Hey, all right. Good afternoon or evening. I'm not really sure to everyone, but sorry about that. My name is Nadine, and today I'll be speaking as the whip for opposition. My preferred POI is probably unmute, because I will be seeing my script and probably not checking the Zoom chat. Oh, and another one, I would also like warn that maybe some of these is a bit triggering, and we really mean no harm or offense in what we're saying, because it's all for the purpose of debate. And if we somehow offend someone, we're really, really sorry. All right, so then I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Wait, sorry, let me. All right, as this is the grand finals for schools, well, then I assume we're all at school, right? And I assume we also live in Indonesia, a very conservative country. Well, then everyone agrees that in situations like these, where the kids are quote unquote different and act not as usual with, especially when it comes to the social cues, they're not really well received. To take from personal experiences, probably seen by most people here, whenever a child acts different or more, whenever a child acts different, they tend to get coined some terms and labelized, and they're treated like they're some. I'm sorry, again, this might be offensive, but this might be really offensive, but from my own personal experience, the people like these, they get called freaks, which is a really bad thing we don't want. Again, I'm sorry if that was offensive, but that's coming from my own personal experiences. They get bullied, they get ignored, they are resented sometimes to the very people that are supposed to support and teach them in school, the teachers. There are many teachers who have sadly bullied these children and do not give them any support they need, however little and minor. They may get a few friends, but the sad fact here is usually some of the friends they have are the fellow people who have been rejected by the rest of the mainstream social condition and at school. And some of them, while they all have different reasons for not being accepted them, right? But some of them may not be accepted for worse reasons, for like such as attitude, which may not necessarily be the best influence on our children in this motion. We're the parents and we have to support and love our children, not by pushing them into the water again, hoping they swim, but by giving them what they need as children. They may need less support, but the support is still needed no matter how little. Normal schools almost never have these for kids. The best you get is a few absolute angels of teachers, but they're outnumbered by the old-fashioned teachers who try to bully them, then try to learn how to help them. All right, again, I apologize really for that term. I'm sorry if that was offensive. It's just, I think that's from what I've seen before. And it's also to show, now we can also show from that very term why it's so bad to be in a regular school, because the fact that some people like that even get called those things is horrendous. We need to solve this by putting them in these in these special needs schools. All right, they said, now let's respond to some of the points and claims. Sorry if, yeah, my timer suddenly turned off, so I think I'll be checking chat for that. All right, so the parents suddenly, sorry. They claim that the parents don't want you to feel like a normal person. If you were the parent, would you like your kids to be bullied to feel like he or she is a normal in her own school or just missing out on some certain events that might hurt them in a certain way? You would rather choose the second options because in another certain way, these kids can still experience these things in a special needs school. As you can see in the world right now, more schools in different sides, special or regular schools, get creative, and there might be like a likeness that there will be a problem in a special needs school. Was that a POI? Anyways, I'll be receiving it later. What the gov essentially wants you to think is that it should criminalize special needs and neurodivergent children and should force them to fit into society because that's what they want. But in reality, who doesn't want to feel safe and secure within their own identity and body? To complain and excuse themselves if they feel comfortable is another point they brought up. But there's no guarantee that these people will be excused, especially with all these extreme teachers. And in this conservative area, we can prove that a lot of them is conservative. They don't understand, especially, of course, the children who have yet to fully develop their sense of morality. They don't fully understand. Sorry, they don't fully understand about what they're doing here. There's no guarantee that they will feel excused if they're uncomfortable, especially with strict teachers that have conservative mentality. If I have to teach them this, that's how the real life works, which is essentially harmful to the child because in these scenarios, they of course have different learning methods. Now, people will also feel that in social needs school, the fact that they have autism and the differences they have with these other kids, they will feel like it's a regular thing and it's not a disadvantage. Whereas we know that perhaps maybe in these regular schools, the other kids bullying them, they will feel, and with all the other kids seemingly being able to do other things that they cannot, they will feel like that is a disadvantage when really we want them to understand that it's something unique to them. There's no exclusivity on their side, but on our side, they're more proud of their identity because they realize that their special needs is not a crime. It's not something to be criminalized. It's something they are born with, and there's something they should have with pride and focus on to be able to do it. And it's something that they were given as something unique that sets them different from other people, but can also be a good thing. And it's not something, again, that should be criminalized, which they would feel if they happened, if they were to go to regular school, even if they went to therapy, which again does not solve it. Okay, next, let's see the clash and weighing for it. I think for the most part, you can see that for the most part, you can see that the main clash here is, does a low support autistic child need the special needs school? And is it better than the regular school? They've consistently stated that they do not believe that the child needs special needs school, and it's better to put them in a regular school where they could learn to adapt and socialize with friends that they get, and work to become more independent and be able to survive better in the real world once they grow up. They believe in special needs schools that won't be able to get a better curriculum or have a harder time finding these schools and not getting the skills they need to survive in real life. Whereas we do not agree with them respectfully, we believe that regular school has too many harms, which we will elaborate further in the next clash. But special needs schools will be able to help our kids more with a more specialized uniform, quiet rooms, all things they still need, as well as supportive teachers who are experienced and have been trained to help these kids and gain skills they might need in the future. We can even have them do extra solutions. The fact is, even if they may still at some point being able to act somewhat what the neurotypical people said and socialize a bit, but more with these people, let's explain more about why this bullying is still likely. It's because they still have many differences, and the info site explicitly mentions they still sometimes miss social cues, such as we can make examples of this, such as not making eye contact, not understanding what they're saying. To some extent, in the beginning, it still helps them out, right? They can, because it's still lesser, they can still make friends. This is great, but at some point, they're going to face challenges all of these children have, mostly in social situation, and kids will at some point, once they have an event that causes other kids to try to be far from them, at some point they'll stop caring about other people think and just do, and they think they should just do whatever they want, because no matter what they do, they feel like they're going to be judged, and the more they go down this rabbit hole, they're going to feel like the more they should really do to combat this. Okay, respectfully. Now, why is our site better? Respectfully, I think the government team misunderstands the machine a tiny bit. They try to find and are respectfully, and have talked a lot more about what the parents are more likely to do, whereas we're trying to say about what we will do as the parent for the well-being of our children. Both sides agree that we want our kids to have a better future. But in this scenario, opposition still wins, our side still wins, because what they're bringing up isn't likely to happen for these kids. There are so many examples. You can know so many people in many schools who have maybe they're a little different, maybe, and this doesn't even just applies to the low autism, but generally to all kids who are different. They feel like they are bullied. They feel like other people hate them. They feel like whatever they do, they'll be judged, and there's nothing they can do about that, right? But this is extremely likely. We can see this just by the amount of cases, the amount of times we've seen this. So that brings up why our likelihood is still better. And what about their best case scenario and our worst case scenario? In their best case scenario, they are still able to make friends. They are still able to do everything well. Sorry?
Time's up.
Ah, yeah, sorry. My timer suddenly turned off in the middle. I'm so sorry. Thank you, but that concludes for my speech, and I am still so very proud to oppose this motion.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. Of course, the judges are not going to write anything after 7:20. So yeah, now to conclude the case for up, I'm calling upon up reply. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Audible.
Okay, so just to restate, my pronouns are she, her. And we deeply apologize if there are any misunderstandings or personal offense that could be taken because of my speech, because this is not the objective. Everything we say here is just for the purpose of debate. And ignore my background noises because there is a construction, I think, next door. So, to conclude this debate, I will be starting my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. The problem on the government side is they live in a highly idealistic and fantastical world, a world that does not exist in status quo, where these children can adapt to mental pressure and discrimination and bullying. Panelists see the problem here. On the government side, they criminalize and they do not support the very existence of low support needs for autism being shown in general, that these people should adapt to these extreme environments and toxicity and pressure. We beg the question, if mental health and bullying doesn't exist, pressure by bullying doesn't exist, or is so easily overcome on their side, since that's what they keep on saying, why do some people still struggle with depression, anxiety, and other social disorders that stem from trauma or PTSD by being socially discriminated? This is a burden that they've yet to prove, despite us calling them out. Their main argument is that it helps them reintegrate into society. However, it is still not mutual exclusive and mutually with the existence of therapy and also specialized programs and learning in these special needs schools that help them reintegrate into society as well. Also, they have not addressed our alternative, which is the existence of extracurricular programs that they or other after school activities that could help them slowly integrate into society as well. Their arguments are still not exclusive. In their best case scenario, children will pick up on social skills. They will learn more skills like integrity, and they won't feel left out in the real world, despite them being neurodivergent. On our worst case, that these kids will feel left out on normal or regular school, and these kids could still, however, we beg that these kids could still get bullied and these kids could still feel left out or not in normal regular school. These kids would then be able to adjust to regular school as well as other students because of their different learning curve and because of the differences and also their special needs. For example, microsensitivity and also the need for quiet spaces, etc., that not all schools might provide. So then we think that this proves why our site is more feasible and likely to happen and also more beneficial and more exclusive because children don't have morally complete systems and it could still expose these most vulnerable actors, these people, children with low needs autism. They don't have morally complete systems yet and they do whatever they think is fun and active first. And even if they do have empathy, which again, not everyone has empathy, they don't really know that bullying is bad because of the conservative environment that they were raised in. On their side of the house, it is most likely that these children will get called freaks or get ignored or get discriminated. And also, they have not addressed the problem with teachers being discriminative and also adding extra pressure and mental strain on these children. Either they might pay a lot of extra attention to these children because they know that they have low needs autism, making them possibly uncomfortable, pressured, or just stressed out because of the extra attention. And teachers who are overgeneralizing people with low needs autism as normal people. People of the norm who do not have any special needs, and they won't be able to keep track of the development of these children if they need a quiet room, special fabric, etc. These side teachers could also blame them if their learning progress is too slow because they don't recognize that they're actually neurodivergent and because they don't exactly look like it or show obvious signs of it then. Or even if they do, these teachers would think that putting more strain on them like this or overgeneralizing them could help them fit into the norm, which is also what the government has stated, even though it again still adds more strain on them, adds more pressure on them that could potentially develop into other mental disorders like PTSD, anxiety, social disorders, and etc. Therefore, to conclude the case, we believe that the opposite side should win.
All right, thank you so much for the fine speech. Now concluding the case of Goff, calling upon Goff reply here.
Hi. Hello. Sorry.
Audible,
Hello.
audible.
Okay, so sorry. All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think as parents, it's really inevitable for you to make choices that feel extremely hard because oftentimes those choices that you make will likely result in like things that really affect your children, which is why it's hard. And I think that this debate really embodies this like dilemma, right? So the question was to send your kids to like a school that can really support them, or whether you're trying to send them to help them learn and survive in the future, that they can then finally function as an adult. But here's the problem. Here's the problem that I think the opposition just simply haven't been able to respond right is it that yes, we understand that as parents that support is important, but that is why you can still get support from so many other factors that we as proposition we've told you. We think that this support can still exist from us as parents, or like support from like families, or even then like the genuine connection like within like the, even if opposition wants to claim that they can only make several friends, within that at the very least those several friends can also give you some support to that people. So these support will likely still exist because we as parents understand that these support is important. But hey, even if we still told you that things like therapy still exist, but the real delta here that exists is that under their side of the house, their children can never be able to learn like the proper social, like how to actually really interact with like the social, like with people socially, with like normal people, like learning how to like take in social cues, like this will like, which is literally something that they have to actually learn when they want to step up, right? But like when you want to step up in the real society, in the real adulthood, there will be so many even way more social dynamics and responsibilities that will even make it so much harder, and it's going to be so hard for those children who has been put in special needs school to actually navigate. We'll tell you the opposition has failed to actually fulfill like the illustration of how they're actually able to tackle all of these issues. But then we as parents of proposition, we understand how this is going to look like. We understand how hard this is going to be for our children, and that is why we think that it's completely worth it for our children to be put in this special in this regular school. So here's why the opposition has lost this debate. I think the opposition has like few strategic flaws in their speech that I think is just really jarring to look at. I think first of all is that they were just never able to prove like the likelihood of the majority of their cases. And I think this looks like, for example, when they want to tell you, oh, these kids will never be able to get meaningful connection. Oh, this will be like bullying. I think that first of all, they've actually never we've already explained to you how for example, like likely this kid can still get connections from like the shared activities they do at school, because something that proposition has been trying to tell you from the very beginning was that these is like largely functioning kids. What this means is that they will likely still be able to like be able to function like normally. Like I think that even to the extent that like it won't be really detected by normal people. But then it's not only the likelihood that they like, I think that opposition completely denies like the mechanism in how certain things happening. Like for example, like how their bullying happen. Like for example, with Tully, right? Just because you miss one joke or even you miss 5 jokes, it's not like people are going to unfriend you and bully you immediately. They've never explained to you the dynamics behind like how all of those things happening, which is why I think that their case is just flaws on those two things. But let's move on. Thing that we've completely pushed to you, we've constantly pushed to you our proposition, and I think it's just really important. So opposition's logic. So the first thing, this thing is on survivability. Opposition's logic was to try to tell that these kids will be never able to fit in and survive. Therefore, it's better to put these kids in special schools. But the way we tackle this is how we tackle this. So we prove to you like how the those autistic kids are still able to function. Like we're illustrating to you how we're still able to get connection, and then we're still like there's still like support and stuff like that. But then second of all, I think that we told you that you never really get a comparative coming from opposition side of house. Okay, so if you get to be in that special needs school, then what happens next? I think that just largely remain hung, like a really hung argument coming from opposition, which we think is very unclear. But in terms of we try to tell of how we are able to tackle this, I think that those kids are, even if they find it hard, they'll still be able to try to like learn and try to rationalize how these social cues work, how these kind of like rationalization work in all those special in all those regular school. I think the way here is simple, is that we as parents all have a duty to ensure your kids' survivability and assure that your kids are able to sustain themselves in the future. So the way here is simple, is that which side is that eventually able to guarantee this thing. I think that you can only get this thing under opposition side of the house. Sorry, proposition side of the house. Part of the post.
All right, thank you so much. That marks the end of the debate. Of course, second round result will be announced in the awarding later on for the judges. Let's go to the